One of the main complaints and holy grail features that DJI FPV users want is HDMI output. DJI do offer you the ability to get video out from their goggles either via Wi-Fi or a cable using their Fly app, or you can actually use the buddy system or the spectator system to allow you to share that view on another set of goggles. What you don't have though out the box is a way of outputting from the DJI system into a TV or a broadcast system for professional use. Whilst DJI don't offer that, there is a product out there that does give you this functionality called Cosmostreamer. Today, I'm going to give you an overview of what Cosmostreamer is, explain what the different options are for you with regards to the different hardware setups, and hopefully give you an overview of what this software and hardware can do. Now, just to be crystal clear, Cosmostreamer is not free. It is a paid product. You can build a Cosmostreamer device yourself, or you can buy the device from them directly, but it is licensable software as well. They have sent me over a license for free for me to be able to make this video today. However, they have not paid me to make this video. They've not seen this video before it's been published. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Okay, so as I've said, if you just want to get video out on the DJI FPV system, there are several ways of doing it. On the early goggles, which is the goggles V1, the V2s, the goggles 2, the goggles Integra, and the new goggles N3, you can do this with the DJI Fly app with a USB cable. This will allow you to view the live view on a smart device, either a tablet or a phone, via the DJI Fly app. On the new DJI Goggles 3, you can do the same thing with the Fly app. You can do it though via Wi-Fi or the cable, and the Wi-Fi function was something new that DJI introduced with the Goggles 3. Unfortunately, whilst you can connect it to a smartphone via a cable, you cannot connect it to a HDMI compatible device. Even if you have a cable like this, which is USB-C to HDMI, this will not convert the video output from the goggles into HDMI for you to be able to use on a TV or in a broadcast environment. If you need HDMI output, you're going to need Cosmostreamer. Now, I should state that there is actually an official way from DJI to get HDMI out on the DJI FPV goggles using the RC Pro. You end up buying this remote, connecting your goggles to it via USB, and then you can use the HDMI port on the goggles to have HDMI output. Now, this is available. However, it is extremely expensive. It is about £900 in the UK. Not sure what it is in dollars, but it is a very expensive option. And it also doesn't have all of the additional functionality that Cosmostreamer brings. So whilst DJI do have an option, it certainly isn't the best one for most people. Now, Cosmostreamer is a combination of hardware and software that gives you video output on DJI, but it's not only just video output. It also builds you a complete professional streaming platform. It is available for a number of the DJI products. It will depend on the type of hardware, and software will depend on what one you need. So for instance, Cosmostreamer is available for the DJI Goggles 3, Goggles 2, Integra and N3. It's available for the Goggles V1 and V2. They are separate products simply because of the differences in hardware, but it is also available for the likes of DJI Fly drones. You can see it for DJI's Pocket series, and it's even available for some Insta360 products as well. The real nice thing about Cosmostreamer is that it isn't just HDMI output, it is a complete professional streaming solution, and there are so many features within this. It is definitely something that many professionals will find handy if they want to use the likes of DJI FPV in a broadcast environment. Now, with regards to getting this, there are two options available. There is a DIY solution that allows you to install the Cosmostreamer software onto your own Raspberry Pi hardware, or you can buy a ready-to-go Raspberry Pi built box. This box is available for $295. That includes everything you need to be able to get it to work, and then you simply need your license depending on what hardware you're using. Now, just a quick note on compatibility, because Cosmostreamer is fully compatible with the new DJI O4 Pro and O4 Air units. In fact, it's compatible with all the Air units. The compatibility is based on the goggles, not the Air units. So there's one license if you want to use it with the V1s and V2s. V2s, and it'll work with all of the ear units that are compatible with them. And there's a different license if you want to use it with the Goggles 2, the Goggles N3, the Goggles 3, or the Goggles Integra. These are the newer platforms, so there's a different license compared to the old one. But if you were to use it with the Goggles 3, for instance, it will work with 03 and 04. If you use it with the Goggles 2, 03, 04, Vista, Runcam Link in the new firmware. All of the compatibility is based on the goggles, and the great thing is you can use it even with 04 as well. Now today we're going to be concentrating on the DIY method. We're going to talk about how to install it on a Raspberry Pi, and then I'm going to walk you through the setup and show you how it actually works. Now they do have a really good wiki that walks you through the process, but I'm going to do that here today. This wiki also describes what different hardware versions it will work with regards to the Pi as well. However, we're going to be concentrating today on a 4B, but they do explain this all in their wiki as well if you want to have a look at it. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do this DIY is a Pi. Now, they recommend the Pi 4B. They say it does work with all of the memory models, but I would try to get the one with the most RAM if you can. You are also going to need an SD card to flash the image onto to place into the Pi as well. Now, with regards to connecting this to everything, what you have is your normal Pi. You're going to need power, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then you would connect your goggles via the main USB-C port there. This will then give us HDMI output via the HDMI ports on the unit, but it also has the built-in streaming functionality as well, which is available via the built-in Wi-Fi adapter. It'll actually set up a wireless access point that you can connect to, but you can use it over Ethernet as well. You do not use these USB ports here on the side for connecting to the goggles. It is important that when you use this, you do use a USB-C to USB-C, which is that one into there, and then the other side into the USB port on the goggles themselves. Once you've got your Pi and SD card, you then need to go to the wiki. I will put a link to this in the description, and scroll down to the section called Installing the Cosmostreamer Firmware. Under here is a link to the zip archive with the firmware on for the Raspberry Pi. You then need to flash this to your SD card. Now, I'm going to use a piece of software called Blana Etcher. This is a piece of software that allows you to flash various images to SD cards. It's really handy. It is available to download. Then you want to open the program, click and find the file that you've just downloaded. Make sure you've got your SD card and then allow it to flash. Now, once you've flashed the Pi, the next thing we need to do is sort out power. As I mentioned earlier, you actually connect your goggles via that USB-C port on the side there. As a result of that, though, you're not going to be able to power the Pi from that USB port. You may find that your DJI goggles may actually power this via the USB, but they do recommend using an external power supply. Now, there are actually a couple of ways of doing this. One of them is with a custom cable, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on, that splits off the USB power. But alternatively, you do have power input pins on the I/O header up here, which allow you to power it off 5 volts. I would personally use that method, and we'll take a look at that in a second, but it is something that you are going to need to take into account because you are using that port there for the output of the goggles. Unfortunately, what you cannot do is use any of these ports with an OTG adapter. It has to be that port for getting the data from the DJI goggles. For instance here, if we look at the GPIO pin headers, you can see pins 2, 4 are both 5 volt power inputs, and then pin 6 is ground. That is the pins in this top corner up here. So what we can do is use a 5 volt back to allow us to power the device. However, as I have said, there is the option of creating your own USB-C to USB-C power cable as well. You would need to actually cut into a standard cable and then add in a USB-A to allow you to power it off the likes of a power bank or something else. This is quite a nice, simple way of doing it if you've modified the cable, but personally, I would go down the back route. That way, you're keeping the cable choice completely independent. You don't need to make sure that you do have a special cable with you. Once you've done that and power it up, it will basically do all of the standard configuration and then be ready to output via HDMI 1. There is, though, some basic configuration that you need to do. First of all, you're going to need to install your license, and you're also then going to need to just do any changes to the main configuration that you may wish to. It will just work once the licensing is done, but there are lots of nice options available within the software. Now, when it comes to that configuration, you don't actually do it via the HDMI output that you see here. The configuration is actually done via Ethernet or the Wi-Fi configuration. You can plug this in to your computer's network port with a crossover cable and actually configure it via a browser, or alternatively, you can use the built-in Wi-Fi access point that comes pre-configured in the Cosmostreamer software to connect either your smartphone or your computer to it via Wi-Fi. Just one thing to note on that Wi-Fi function, that built-in connection is on 5 gigahertz as standard. You can change it to 2.4 gigahertz in the software if you want to, but as standard it will come up on 5 gigs, and that is the simplest way to configure this. Now, once it's booted up on your HDMI output, you will see an image that looks like this here. Now, this QR code is actually telling you the ID of the board that you have created. You will need this to actually license your Raspberry Pi. You will need to give this to the guys at Cosmostreamer, and then they will be able to provide you a license key, and then you will be able to use your device. Now, as I've said, the simplest way to do this is either via the LAN port here or via the built-in Wi-Fi. Now, on my phone, you can see that Cosmostreamer is showing up as an available wireless access point. That is what we're going to use here today. I'm not going to do it on my phone. We will do it on my PC, but you could do this on your phone if you wanted to. Now, once you've connected to the Wi-Fi, you need to go to a web page called cosmostreamer.local. This will then come up just as you see it here. You can see bad license, Cosmostreamer NG DJI G3 G2 Integra, and that's the version. And again, it's given us the ID for my board. You can see up here, it gives us various pieces of information as well. Now, if you go to the bottom corner, you can click on here, and this gives us a list of options. You've got things such as camera controls, camera settings, device settings, gamepad settings, and all of the other options. What I'm going to do is click on device settings, and under here, under license, here is where we would actually put in the license that has been provided by the guys at Cosmostreamer. Once you've purchased your license, you can paste the number into the box and then click Install License Key. Now that license is installed correctly, you can see here on the web view, it now says camera disconnected rather than complaining about licensing. And if we look on the HDMI output, it's changed again, simply to say Cosmostreamer, so it's now ready to connect to my goggles. And now you can see on the HDMI output that we have the camera view showing from my goggles. I've got the camera down here. You can currently see the OSD and everything because I've got that option turned on. For instance, if I go into the menu, we see a full replica of what we see. If we go into the display settings, you can see you've got all of the usual options, but if we go into camera, we can then change the settings for camera view. So for instance, if we turn off camera view recording, so now I've turned that off, we now have a clean view from the DJI system. Now, once you return to the browser, you should now see your live view image. If you don't, click on the little 3 lines down here and just check which video player you are using. I'm using JM Muxa, and that should be the one that gives you the video like you see it here. Now, there is loads of functionality on this software, and I'm not going to go through absolutely everything, but I do want to show you some key important ones because there's some real nice integration with the DJI system here. So for instance, under video options, you can actually set from the software the live view resolution and feed frame rate that the system is using. So here we've got 1080p 100, but I could actually change this on the fly down to 2.7K 30, and that will actually change it on the DJI system. This isn't just the output that you're getting, it's the actual system setting that it's using. They also have some functionality for gamepad settings. So for instance, if you want to enable a gamepad with it, you can. You've got device settings where we saw the licensing earlier, but under this, there is so many other options. So for instance, we've got our camera type, so we can set that from what we're choosing based on the license that we've gone with. We've got info around things such as secondary camera options, splash screen, logos, and intro options. You can add your own splash screen, you can add your own logo, you can even do things like add your own background video and audio. We've got our Ethernet and our Wi-Fi settings. As I showed earlier, under here you can actually set the mode. I've set mine to 2.4 gigs because that's what I'm using here. Under display, you have lots of nice configuration, so you can choose to flip the image vertically or horizontally. You can rotate the image if you want to. You can adjust if you want it to keep the aspect ratio, letterbox format, introduce video smoothing, or show the last frame when the stream is lost. You've got options around the main display, so you've got settings here for that. Secondary display, DSI display, SPI, built-in OSD features, as well as options around touchscreens. Under video and audio, you then have the audio settings if you want to adjust them, and then you've got your video settings. For instance, you've got your bitrate settings available, your resolution settings available, as well as your frame rate if you want to change it. You've got streaming settings, and this is something that a lot of people will really like. You've got loads of different options. So you've got your UDP raw feeds, which is H.264 and H.265. You've got RTP, RTSP, RTMP, SRT, MPEG-TS, you've got NDI and NDI-HX settings, you've got V412, DVB-T, you've got a transparent bridge feature, as well as 3D options there as well. We also have built-in recording, so we can say to it to show us an icon when we're recording. You can choose where you want it to record, and you can also tell it how you want it to split the video files for recording as well. And you can also set the format and even allow it to make thumbnails. You've got overlay settings, RC control settings via the Raspberry Pi. So again, you can set options for RC1, RC2 and S-Bus. You've got servo control built into this if you want to. They've got options up here to enable a joystick or sliders, and then you've got the GPIO shown there with all of the options that you want to use. You've got your control settings, so RC control and app control, gimbal settings, auto movement, zero tier, tail scale options, Wirral light, as well as the main system settings where you can update the firmware, update the configs and everything else. Now, as I've said, I'm not going to go into every single feature on this, but there is so much functionality under here, it's crazy. It really does allow you to very nicely integrate this into whatever system you intend to use it with. Now, obviously, the main feature of this is going to be the HDMI output for most people. Most people are not going to be using it in a broadcast setting, but what it does allow you to do is a lot more than just use it as a HDMI out device. You've got all that streaming functionality, and you can actually build yourself a very powerful, portable streaming setup with the DJI system. Now, just to show you that this does work with O4 and the Goggles 3 as well, here we have the Goggles 3 connected. Here you can see the output from the O4 Pro Air unit connected to a capture card, which is that cable you can see there. If I just go into the menu on the goggles, I've currently got it so you can see the menu. But if I just go into the top option there, you can see we are on the O4 Pro Air unit and we have all of the options available around that. Okay, now, just before we wrap this one up and share with you some thoughts, there's a couple of things I just want to highlight. Now, with regards to power, I've shown you in this video how to power the Pi and how to actually do that either via the headers or use that external cable I talked about. There is, though, a quirk on the DJI goggles with the built-in batteries when using something like this. These goggles will not charge off USB when using video out over USB like you see with Cosmostreamer. As a result of that, if you're using Cosmostreamer, it will always drain the goggles battery. Even if you are providing 5 volts via that USB port to power the Pi, it will not charge the goggles. As a result of that, I've released a video showing you how to modify your Goggles 3. It'll be the same for the N3 and the Integras to allow you to power these off an external supply. That allows you to get more use from these goggles. Otherwise, you would have to keep disconnecting them and charging the battery separately. It is a quirk of the way DJI's power system works on the goggles that it won't charge and video out at the same time. Now, with regards to the pricing of this, I've discussed it already. Now, with regards to the price, I do know there are some people who may feel it is a bit expensive. However, this is a professional product that gives you features you just can't get. The equivalent DJI option is many hundreds of dollars and pounds more if you were to use the RC Pro. This is an absolute bargain in comparison. HDMI, video streaming, the ability to overlay your logos and all of that functionality. However, if you're someone who just wants cheap HDMI out, I get you might feel it's a bit expensive, but this is still the best option. And I think at $150 for the license, it is cheap as chips in comparison to the alternative. Yes, I get some people might want something for 50, 60 or even free, but the reality is the developer's designed this, he's built in lots of functionality, and he has the right to get money back for doing that, and I still think it's very fairly priced. Now, that is pretty much it from me on this video. I really like it. It's got great functionality. As I've said, if you're interested in getting it, there will be a link to it in the description. I want to say a big thank you to the team over at Cosmostreamer for sending this over. This video took a bit longer than it should have to get done. If there are any things I haven't answered, put a question below and I will try and do that. Finally, if you'd like to support the channel to allow me to keep making content like this in the future, please do consider checking out the link to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee. It is only through the support of my Patreons we're able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content in the future, please do consider checking it out. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has donated. Patreon, we would not be able to do this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.